Okay, guys, good morning. Welcome. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone online as well. This is the last day of our 5-day course, and we're going to be starting with meditation as we do each morning. We're going to do loving kindness meditation. Then I'm going to move into this talk about practicing the path in the workplace, because if you only practice the teachings in your personal life, you actually wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment. You're going to need to get to a point where you're practicing the teachings at all times. So I'm going to give you some pointers on that. Then I'm going to share with you guys something that's called the art of the friendly no, how to say no without saying no. This is going to help you when you're dealing with people who haven't actually practiced these teachings, and you'd just like to kind of soften the way that you say things and speak a bit more gentle, something that's more inviting and more welcoming to the person, so you don't experience the hostility and bitterness coming back to you. It'll actually help you a lot in your day-to-day interactions. So I'm going to teach you that as well. We'll probably finish up around maybe 10:30, 11 today. We'll see. But usually it's a pretty short day. And if you guys would like to go out and do something, like maybe have some lunch somewhere or do something like that, we can always do those kinds of things. We can talk about it after class. So what I do as I start getting towards the end of these classes like this is I start helping you guys to be able to stand up on your own feet, to be able to meditate. So I usually don't give guidance as we get closer and closer to the end of a course. So for those of you guys that understand, the meditation that we typically do in the morning for this course is loving kindness, where I start with the chanting. So I'm still going to do that because that helps to ease the mind into meditation if you decide to chant. Then the breathing mindfulness meditation would be wise to do that for a brief period, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, where you're focused on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and come back to the breath. But then you'd like to come in with those phrases where you repeat in your mind, like, may I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. You would like to do that on the out breath. And then you like to go to wider and wider and wider rings until you eventually get to all beings. And then go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation. And then we're going to come out of all of that with the chanting. So do you guys feel comfortable with doing that type of meditation on your own? If you aren't familiar with the loving kindness meditation and you don't feel 100% comfortable, you might just decide to do the breathing mindfulness meditation and just do that all the way through, where you just focus on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go. So you guys can choose. This is going to help you guys so that when you're outside of the class, then you can still meditate and you have the confidence to do that. And what I'm going to do after our meditation is before I talk about this topic, I'm going to see what questions you guys have about meditation, just kind of like a free-for-all question period about meditation. So that way it'll help you guys to build up your practice. So take whatever position you're comfortable in, and I'll get started with the chanting. You guys are welcome to join in, and then you guys are on your own for the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Potang Mahakavanhang Apivate-ami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savakasangho Sanghang namami. Namo rasa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo rasa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo rasa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Iti piso mahakava arahang สัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตวามนุสนังปุตโตภาควาติ หังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโหตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมดามังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสรังโอโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Good morning to everyone who's joining online as well. So this was basically a 30-minute meditation, and as part of each one of these courses, my aim is to help build students up to the point where they can be meditating for 30 minutes by the time they get to the end of the course. So maybe you can check in with your own mind here, and maybe that felt like, wow, that was a real stretch, and you can see where you're at in your meditation practice. Or maybe you felt like, wow, that went by really quick. That felt like so straightforward, so easy. You can understand that about your mind. Or maybe you felt like, wow, that was just right. That's how you can use something like this to be able to really help you. So this was about a 30-minute meditation. And oftentimes when people are in a course like this, they're building up their meditation practice. So what I do here is I pause and see if there's any questions that you guys have about your meditation practice. Is there anything you guys would like to ask? Any and all questions about meditation? No questions? Okay, let me see if we have anything online here. Okay, I don't see any questions here online. Oh, you have a question? Yeah, if we could use the mics today since we're live streaming, that'd be great.
It's a small question, but about the respiration, which is the correct from the nose to mouth or nose to nose?
The best way to do it would be through your nose in and out, but I don't think of it as the correct way or the right way because some people don't have a nose, right? Because of impermanence, there's going to be some people that need to breathe through their mouth, or some people breathe through a tracheotomy and things like this. So for those of us that are able to breathe through our nose, you would like to breathe through the nose. but there's going to be some people who need to breathe through the mouth or breathe through their trachea. This is, multiple ways that people breathe. So the important thing is that you focus the mind on the breath, so you would like to, for you, breathe in and out through your nose. But there's going to be some times where you need to meditate. Maybe you have a sinus infection or something like that. You're going to need to breathe through your mouth. So this is what I did when I was training my mind really closely is, of course, I mostly breathe through my nose, but I knew there was going to be a time where I couldn't breathe through my nose. So it was only a matter of time because of impermanence, right? So even when my nose was clear, I trained the mind to be able to meditate by breathing through the mouth, where I focused on the sensation of air coming over the lip. That's what the focal point was, where when you're breathing through the nose, you can focus on the sound of the breath coming in and out of the nose, or you can focus on the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. But when you're not breathing through the nose, you got to find something else. So that's where I focused on the sensation of the air. And I did that even when my nose was clear so that I could train the mind to be able to do that. And it wasn't too long after that, a few weeks, that I actually got a sinus infection and I couldn't breathe through the nose. And boom, no big deal, right? Because I have another option. Whereas if you haven't trained that way, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't breathe through the nose. What am I going to do? That's because the mind's craving permanence. So you'd like to see those situations and then train for those situations so that your mind doesn't get hooked to anything whatsoever, even meditation or where you're meditating in terms of your breath, the location that you're meditating. Your mind can get hooked to like meditating in your bedroom all the time, although you travel, so it probably won't be the case. But, you would like to make sure your mind's not getting to the point where it's craving permanence in anything, including meditation. Okay. So I don't see any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you guys to understand how to practice the path to enlightenment in the workplace. Because as I shared at the beginning, if you were only practicing these teachings in your personal life, you actually wouldn't experience enlightenment. You're going to need to actually practice in the workplace as well. So I'm going to provide you guys some guidance on this, and it'll be a very short talk. And then you guys can ask questions when we get to the end as well. So you're going to need to have some type of livelihood to support yourself, right? You can't just, unless you're, rich and wealthy and you just got a lot of money stacked up in the bank somewhere, you're going to need to be doing something in order to be able to support yourself. And even if you had lots of money in the bank, you were probably invested and, there would be a certain livelihood there. So what you're going to need to do in order to be able to practice these teachings in the workplace is, like I've been starting out each one of these discussions, you're going to need to acquire wisdom. I never know who's going to be in one talk versus another. Sometimes we have new people join us at different times. So that's why I start each one of these talks with, you need to acquire wisdom, right? You need to be able to develop your own understanding of the path to enlightenment. Without understanding the Eightfold Path, where you've learned it intellectually, you've reflected on it to independently verify it, and you practice it, you wouldn't actually be able to have the wisdom that you need to be able to practice these teachings in the workplace. You're going to need to practice meditation and generosity. Sometimes when things are going, to the point where you have a lot of projects and a lot of tasks at work, sometimes what people do is the first thing they start skimping on is their meditation practice. Maybe they have a big project coming up and they're putting a lot of work and effort into their project, and they're like, oh, I don't need to meditate today. I got to work on that project, right? Because their mind's craving to hurry up and get that project done. That's just the opposite of what you would like to be doing. In fact, when you're having a lot of busy activity at work, you would actually like to be meditating more, because in those situations, you're going to be making more decisions, and those decisions are going to impact you because you're making so many decisions. So you would like to have the best capable mind possible to be able to make those decisions. So make sure you're sticking with your meditation practice consistently, even when things get busy at work. And even then, when things get busy, actually increase your meditation to actually meditate more. This is the way that I do it. Like if I'm teaching a big retreat and there's 20, 30, 50 people here, I actually meditate more when those people are around. I don't meditate less. I meditate more, right? So you would like to be able to make sure that you're meditating at all times, staying consistent with that. Also, you would like to practice generosity in the workplace, because you're going to need to practice generosity to train your mind to let go, because that's what generosity is there for, to enhance the quality of your mind, where you're practicing to the point where you don't have any expectation of anything in return. So in your workplace, you're going to need to practice with your coworkers, with your boss, and people like this. If you work in a small company, it's pretty easy to buy some bagels, to buy some milkshakes, or, help somebody with a certain project that maybe you're not allocated to that project, but you can apply some effort to help them. Because remember, it's not just money and things like that, material possessions that you can practice generosity with. You can practice generosity with your effort and your energy as well. So you can help people with things like that. Or maybe they're moving over the weekend and you'd like to go help them to move. And that would be practicing generosity with some of your coworkers. You'd like to treat everybody equally. If you're going to practice generosity, like say you're going to bring in a milkshake, you're not interested in just bringing it in for that one coworker who you really get along well with, because then the other 5 or 6 or 8, they're going to get jealous. If you're going to bring in a milkshake, you would like to bring in one for everybody, because when that jealousy is arising, it's their own mind that's causing it, but they don't realize that their mind is causing it. They're going to think you're the one who's causing those painful feelings, and they're going to want to push you aside. They're going to want to be bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or put expectations on you. So you would like to be able to practice generosity equally with all people. If you work in a large company, that's where I gave you the idea, the example of, like, say you bring in 20 donuts, you put them in the conference room and you send out an email to everybody and you say, hey, everybody, there's donuts in the conference room. There's 20 in there. Enjoy, right? Maybe you have 300 people in your company, right? And maybe if I'm the 21st person who goes in there and I don't get the donut, I realized that it was my decision. I just stayed on that email a little bit too long, or I stayed on that phone call a little bit too long. And now I'm not going to attribute any kind of feelings that I might have to you, because I can see that it was my decisions. You were practicing generosity equally with everybody. So that's what you would like to be doing. You're going to need to eliminate complacency at work. One of the things that the Buddha teaches you in regards to the path to enlightenment is that you're going to need to eliminate complacency. Oftentimes people are complacent. It's like, I'm not going to the temple today. I'm not going to read that book today. Oh, I'm not going to meditate today. There can be a lot of complacency in the unenlightened mind, and an individual doesn't apply effort and energy towards their growth and development on the path. So you're going to need to arise determination, dedication, and diligence in order to be able to get to enlightenment. You're not going to just stumble your way into enlightenment. It's going to come through concerted, conscious decisions of walking closer and closer to the enlightened mental state, where you're walking closer and closer to the light. You can't be complacent. So you can take these lessons about how to pursue the path to enlightenment and get to enlightenment and apply it to your work, where you're not interested in being complacent at work. Let's just say your boss comes and gives you a project. And let's just say on Monday morning, they say, hey, I need you to take care of this project. If you could take care of this and deliver it by Friday afternoon, that would be wonderful. And maybe you look at the project and you're like, this is going to take me all of 3 hours to do it. And now you kind of wait and you don't do it on Monday. You don't do it Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And you're thinking, I'll do it Friday morning and hand it in on Friday afternoon. Well, Friday morning rolls around and on your way to work, you get a flat tire, right? And now you're having to get your car fixed. And next thing you know, it's lunchtime by the time you get to work and you have 30 minutes before you need to deliver this thing, right? That was really unwise that you allowed your mind to be complacent during that period of time. Instead, just go ahead and knock it out on Monday, right? Or knock it out on Tuesday. And if you hand it in on Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning, hey, your boss can see that you're on top of things, right? And they can see that, wow, this person's really productive. Maybe I'll give them more responsibility. I'll give them more of a salary. I'll staff them on projects that are going to really help them to grow their career. This is going to help you at work. So it's important to eliminate any complacency at work. You're going to need to practice right livelihood. We talked about this as part of the Eightfold Path on Monday. What right livelihood is the first fold of purification, is that you eliminate business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons, because all of those are going to produce harm, and you would like to eliminate that harm. Then you would like to get to the point where you're not having scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, or pursuing gain with gain. This is going to help you to be able to now get to a point where you're doing your livelihood very well and you're having helpful results and beneficial results. But then you're going to need to get to the second fold of purification, which is you're doing a livelihood where you don't have any of the fetters involved. the 10 fetters. You guys didn't learn those as part of this class. I teach it in other programs, but these 10 individual pollutions, they can actually come out in your livelihood when you're interacting in your livelihood. And in order to get to that second fold of purification, you're going to need to make sure that your pollutions of mind aren't coming into your livelihood. So the Buddha's teachings on this are here. Here's what we were talking about on Monday. This is the first fold of purification. If you'd like to see the second fold of purification, it's in volume 12, chapter 14 of our book series, and you'll see what he talks about there. So if you're in between jobs, or if you're in a job that you really don't like and you despise going to work, you're not going to get to enlightenment this way because you don't have a way to support yourself. You don't have a way to contribute to society in order to be able to acquire the resources you need. Or you're in a livelihood you don't like, and now you drag yourself to work every day. You're not going to get to peace and joy that way, right? So if you've ever had that kind of job, or you currently have that job where you're dragging yourself to work today, you're going to need to change. You're going to need to look in your mind. You're going to need to make different decisions so you can experience different results. And the Buddha is giving you guidance of how to do that. Because by the time you get to a right livelihood, you will thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing. It won't even feel like work anymore. It's just like you go do this thing that you enjoy every day, right? And you're helping people. Maybe you're serving mango and sticky rice, or maybe you're flying an airplane, or maybe you're babysitting children, or maybe you're helping elderly senior care people in a retirement home or something like that. Whatever it is that makes this being tick, that's what you would like to figure out. But when you have pollution in your mind, when you have craving, it's going to pull you in all these different directions. It's going to pull you towards money. It's going to pull you towards some big title. It's going to pull you towards this beautiful car, nice house, and all these other things that your mind's going to be pulling you towards. And when you get rid of all that craving and you just sit down and look at your mind about what is it that you really would like to be doing in this world, that's where you can find something that really you thoroughly enjoy, because that's what you would like to get to. And it's probably going to take you time to bounce around to a couple different livelihoods before you figure that out. You know, you're not going to just come out of this class and boom, land in a livelihood that you feel really great about. So you oftentimes need to try a bunch of different things before you can find what it is that you think is going to be most helpful for you and that you're going to thoroughly enjoy. But as you're training your mind and you're getting rid of these pollutions, it's going to help you to see more and more clearly what is that livelihood that you're going to thoroughly enjoy. The mind can only do one thing at a time. So when you're at work, you would be wise to just do one thing at a time. Oftentimes in the work environment, people are trained to do what they call multitasking. It's actually physically impossible for you to multitask. Your mind can't do more than one thing at a time. What you're actually doing is you're doing one thing for 3 to 5 seconds, and then you're jumping to another thing for like 10 seconds, and then you're jumping to another thing for 10 seconds. So you're not doing all 3 of those things at one time. You're actually doing one thing at a time. But your mind's bouncing from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. It's almost like a horse racing around a racetrack. And if you've ever been to a race track where horses are racing, when they go to the barn, they can't calm down. They're all hyped up. It's the same thing for a human mind, that if you go to work all day and you're bouncing around from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, when you go home, you're going to find it challenging to actually be relaxed. You're going to have stress and anxiety in your mind, and your mind's going to lack concentration and focus. So you like to just do one thing at a time. If you're having difficulties with that, you practice what's called singleness of mind. Singleness of mind is where you're doing just one thing at a time. This requires gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. You're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and instantly start doing one thing at a time, because your mind's going to want to be bouncing around because that's what it's used to. But the more and more that you actually practice doing just one thing at a time, your mind will actually get better and better at it. The way that I think about it is that if you had a piece of wood and a steel rod and you've grinded it back and forth, when you first start doing this, it's going to bounce around a lot because there's not a nice groove there yet. But if you grind that steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to get a nice groove going. And when it pops out, you're going to know that and you're going to be able to bring it back. But if you grind that steel rod back and forth enough, eventually you're going to get a really deep groove going and it won't ever pop out. So that's what you're going to need to do with your mind, that you're going to need to practice just one thing at a time, singleness of mind, and your mind's going to bounce around initially a lot. But then you're going to need to practice singleness of mind more and more. So if you're in a business meeting and your boss is up there talking about this new project that they'd like you to work on, and your mind's thinking about your trip to Thailand in 3 months, and you just can't wait to get there, cut that off. Let it go. Come back to whatever it is that's going on in the meeting, because it's not going to help you in the business meeting to be thinking about Thailand. It's not time to go to Thailand yet. It's not time to think about that. It's time to apply your effort and energy to work, because that's where the benefit's going to come. So cut that off and let it go. If you're noticing that your mind is doing anything other than the thing that's in front of it, cut it off and let it go, and come back to whatever the task is that you're working on. If you're interacting with other people at work, and say like you're in your office and people are coming in and barging in your office, it's important to do just one thing at a time there too, and interact with just one person at a time. Because if you're in your office and you're on the phone and somebody barges in, like a coworker, and you stop your phone call and you start talking to that person, then what you've just taught that person is, hey, barge into my office at any time. No matter what I'm doing, I'm going to stop and I'm going to talk to you. If you function like this at work, the next thing you know, you're going to have constantly people coming by your office, just barging in and expecting that you're going to talk to them as soon as they walk into the room. So what you would like to do is just do one thing at a time. Handle things single-threadedly. Talk with one person at a time. If you're talking on the phone and someone barges into your office, just keep handling who you're talking to on the phone, right? That person, if it's not that urgent, they can leave and come back later, or they can come another time, what have you. You would like to just do one thing at a time. I used to do this when I was in business. My boss would walk into the office sometimes, and I would sit there on the phone. I would just handle what I'm doing on the phone. I wouldn't even address my boss, because I'm working for them anyway. I'm trying to help them and help us to be able to succeed in this effort. So I'm not going to stop talking to this person on the phone just because my boss walked into the office. We used to do this in my business too. When I used to operate businesses, I used to train my administrative assistants to just do one thing at a time. If they were talking on line 1 and line 2 calls, what most offices do is they will put line 1 on hold. They will go to line 2. They will say, I can't talk right now. Hold on. And then they'll go back to line 1 and they'll start talking to line 1. That's not the way I trained our admins. I trained our admins that if you're on line 1 and you're talking and line 2 rings in, just let it ring. You've got caller ID, you've got voicemail, and people can leave a message or you can call them back based on the caller ID. Just handle one person at a time. And our business was wildly successful because people really enjoyed the fact that we just dedicated our time to helping them, and we didn't put them on hold and just let them sit there and sit there and sit there and sit there. So this is a great way to do things, but it's opposite of what people think. People think they're actually being more productive if they put number 1 on hold, go to number 2. They've got number 2. They're going to put number 2 on hold, and now they're going to go to number 1. But now number 2 is just sitting there, just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. It's better to just let it go to voicemail or check the caller ID and call them afterwards. So just handle one person at a time. And this is actually going to help you to be more productive. Your people in your office are going to learn that they can't just barge into your office and you're going to address them right away. They're going to need to wait until you have time to actually help them. When you're at work, you're going to need to keep your mind calm. This is called equanimity. If your mind is angry and frustrated, having stress and anxiety at work, your mind's uncalm. It's shaken up. And if your mind is uncalm, you're not going to have mindfulness. What mindfulness is awareness of mind. And if you don't have mindfulness or awareness of mind, you're not going to have focus and concentration to be able to apply to whatever it is that you're working on. Because when you have focus and concentration, you can access your wisdom. That's what's allowing you to make wise decisions in any given situation. But if your mind's all shaken up and you don't have awareness of your mind and you're lacking concentration and focus, you can't access your wisdom. And now you're not going to perform well at work. So you would like your mind to be calm, steady, and stable. Have equanimity, evenness of temper, especially in difficult situations. Then you have mindfulness or awareness of mind. Then you'll have focus and concentration, and you can access your wisdom, and you can perform really well at work. So it's important that you practice this as part of your daily life at work. This is the Eightfold Path, and this is what I taught on Monday. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. This is what's going to lead you to enlightenment. And in order to get to the enlightened mental state, you would need to practice this inside and out, backwards and forwards. Each day of your life, you're going to need to tweak this closer and closer until eventually you're practicing it perfectly and you're practicing it with ease. But to be able to get to that point, it's going to be challenging for you to get up to that point. So you just work each day by day to work your practice up to the point where you're practicing the Eightfold Path, and then you live your life that way for an extended period of time. That's what's going to lead to enlightenment. Well, there are certain lessons here that you learn about how to get to enlightenment that you can actually apply to your day-to-day life. I'll show you what I mean by this. Okay, so with right view, for those of you guys that have learned this, you understand that the Buddha teaches the Four Noble Truths, and he teaches you how it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings, that it's not the outside world that's causing you to be angry or sad or frustrated or any of these other feelings. It's coming from your mind itself. Oftentimes people blame others for the feelings that they're having, but it's actually coming from your own mind. So the Buddha helps you to be able to see this through right view. Essentially, what he's teaching you is to accept responsibility for your own feelings, your own intentions, your speech, your actions. Oftentimes people blame these things on other people, but it's actually coming from your own mind. So you can take this lesson of accepting responsibility for your own mind, your own life, and you can apply it to work, where you can accept and acknowledge responsibility for projects and assignments. Everything that you experience is a result of decisions that you're making. So accept responsibility and handle that all the way through at work. Then your right intention, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, it's essential that you practice this from the teachings of the Buddha. You're going to need to learn what those things are and apply them in your day-to-day life at work. Then the same thing is true with right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, this mental discipline. You're going to need to understand what that is and apply it in your day-to-day work. So if you don't know what these things are yet, you're going to need to learn that first, which I taught that on Monday. And you can watch the recordings, you can read our books, you can listen to the podcast. These are all available for you if you weren't here on Monday. So you're going to need to practice this in the workplace, this entire Eightfold Path. Okay, so do you guys have any questions on this little short talk just about how to apply the teachings of the Buddha in the workplace? Anything you'd like to ask? No questions? Okay, so there's just one more thing left for this particular course, and this actually takes me all of about 10 minutes to teach it to you, and then I'll just see what questions you guys have, and we'll be done for the entire course. I call this the art of the friendly no, how to say no without saying no. It sounds like the title of a book or something like that, or maybe like a blog post or something, right? But this is actually a neat little tool, a little technique that you can use in order to maintain healthy relationships. Because remember, this course is all about harmonious relationships and developing harmonious relationships. If you're in a situation where somebody's asking you for something, they are most likely going to have craving, desire, attachment in their mind because they're not training their mind. So if somebody comes to you like a friend or family member and says, hey, can I borrow some money? I'd like to borrow some money. I want $1,000. They're probably got a craving to get that $1,000 from you. And if you just say, no, you can't borrow that money, that word no is going to trigger their craving. They're going to get angry and frustrated. They're causing it themselves, but they don't realize that. They think you're causing it. And what they're going to end up doing is they're going to get angry, and they're either going to push you aside and no longer talk to you ever again, or they're going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile to you through their intentions, speech, and actions, or they're going to start pressuring you and putting expectations on you and trying to pressure you to be able to give them that money. Or let's just say you have a coworker or a friend who invites you to like a housewarming party or a weekend cookout or something like that. And they're like, hey, Vibhav, can you come to my housewarming party? I really like you to come. And you say, no, I can't come. They're going to experience anger and frustration because they're craving, they're longing, yearning for you to come. They're going to either push you aside, with aversion. They're going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're going to start pressuring you. Come on, come to my party. You know, it's going to be so fun. I really would like you to come. You're going to be the life of the party. Come on, just come, right? So this is what you're going to encounter. So there's a way for you to say no without saying no. And that's what I'm going to teach you, okay? So the problem here that you're addressing is that the unenlightened mind does not typically like to hear the word no. In certain versions of that, like can't, don't, won't, right? So the Buddha is teaching you how to get to peace and joy, but he's also teaching you how to navigate the world of unenlightened beings, right? So you're going to have plenty of unenlightened beings out there that you're going to be navigating through. And this word no is unwelcomed. They don't like this word. It's not welcomed in their mind. And this is where they're going to experience anger and frustration, and they don't realize it's their own mind that's causing it. So the solution here is to not use these words and find alternative ways to communicate. So I'm going to give you guys some examples on this. Let's just say somebody came to me and said, "Hey, David, can I borrow some money?" This actually happened very early in my life. When I first got out of college, I had a friend who came and asked me to borrow some money. And at that time, I didn't understand this. And what I said to him is I handled it all in a way that is not wise. I said, "Well, what do you need the money for?" He said, "Well, I need to pay for tuition. I need to pay my books," because I graduated college and he was 1 year behind me. So he had one more year to be able to graduate. And he said he needed to pay his tuition and pay his books. I said, "How much do you need?" He said like $400 and something. And I was like, wow, that was a lot of money. Because at that time of my life, that was a lot of money. Now it's even a lot of money, right? So I was like, wow, that's a lot of money. And he said, "Yeah, I need to do this." And I said, "By the way, what did you do last night?" He said, "Oh, I went to the bar with my friends." I said, "Really? How many drinks did you have?" He was like, "Oh, I had like 12 drinks." I was like, "Wow, why didn't you use that money for your tuition and your books?" Well, he didn't like that very much, right? Because I was giving him this unsolicited guidance. I was teaching him, and when he didn't ask for anything, he just asked for money. So I never heard from that guy ever again. He left my house that day, and I never heard from him ever again. And he was a really good friend. He was a really nice guy. We never had a harsh word between the two of us, ever. Even at that point, we never had a harsh word between us. All he tried to do was kind of pressure me a bit to give him the money, and I just explained to him that I wasn't able to do that, right? So I never heard from that guy ever again, right? So that's not the way that you would like to handle that. The way that I would handle it today, if that same person came and asked me to borrow money, I would say, "Oh, thank you so much, Jeremy, for considering me such a good friend that you'd be willing to ask me for money. I'm going to need to check my finances. And if I can allow you to borrow that money, I will let you know." So I said no, but I didn't say no, right? I said, "Thank you so much for considering me to be such a close friend that you'd be willing to ask me to borrow money. I'm going to need to check my finances. And if I can let you borrow money, I will let you know." Right? So now if I just never let him know, I've followed through on what I said. And then now let's just say they start pressuring me like, "Come on, like, can you check now and let me?" I'm not able to check at this particular moment, but do you have other people that you're able to talk to? Because I'm going to need to check, and I'm not sure what my financial status is, but if I can let you borrow it, I will let you know, right? So this is a way of saying no without saying no, right? And now I didn't say the word no, and now they're maybe going to go find it somewhere else. Or let's just say somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, David, I want you to come to my party this weekend. I'm going to have this big party at my house on Saturday." Right? And I know that I'm not going to this party, right? Because maybe they're going to have, alcohol there, and I'm not interested in going to a party that has alcohol, right? So maybe I know already that I'm not going, right? And I might say to them, I'll say, "Hey, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate that you're willing to invite me and you consider me to be involved in your party, in your event. I'm going to need to check to see what's going on. And if I'm able to come, I will let you know." Right? I haven't said no. And now they might just accept that and say, "Oh, okay, thank you. Let me know if you can come." They might say that and walk away. but they might start trying to pressure me. They might say, oh, come on, David, we're going to set you up in the middle of the party. We're going to give you a microphone. You can teach the teachings of the Buddha. You can lead us in a meditation. Man, we really want you to be there, right? Like, come on, come on, come on, right? They might start trying to pressure me. This is their craving. This is their longing, yearning. And then for that reason, I'm surely not going to come if they're longing, yearning, and craving like that. So I'll just reiterate what I said. I said, hey, I can see you're really excited about me coming. I'm going to need to check things, and I will let you know if I'm able to come, right? And this is a way to allow this person to kind of let them down slowly, right? Because the other option is you say no, and they get angry and frustrated. Or the other option is you go and you really don't want to be there, and now you're frustrated that you're actually there. You're grumpy and irritable, right? Because of your craving, and that's what you're looking to get rid of. By the time you're enlightened, you won't have that grumpiness and irritability. So these are your options. You can either say no, and they're going to get angry, and then you're going to experience either pushing away, bitterness and harshness and expectations coming to you, or you could go and now you don't really want to be there and you're not enjoying yourself anyway. Those two options aren't wise. Instead, you can just do something like this. And sometimes when I teach this, people say, this is kind of cushy. Why don't you just be direct with people? You can try that if you like, and you're going to see what happens. This actually works really well. I had this one gentleman one time, he was sitting right here. He was laughing the whole time I was teaching this. He thought it was so silly to be able to talk to people like this. And he was asking me all these questions, and you could tell that he was not into understanding this and learning it. But then about 6 months later, he called me up. He said, David, I see what you're talking about now. I encountered this situation and this situation and this situation, and I didn't do it the way that you taught, and it didn't turn out well. But then just yesterday, I did it the way you taught, and it worked perfectly. Right? So when you're learning things like this, it's going to be maybe opposite of the way that you currently do things. But when you implement something like this, that's where you're going to see through your practice that it actually works. So I share this with you so that if you guys would like to talk about examples from your own life, I can help you to be able to see how to do this. So if you guys have questions of how to apply this in certain situations, let me know and I'll help you. Looks like you have a question, or you'd like to share maybe an example.
Firstly, one question. We learned a lot about generosity.
Mm-hmm.
If you have money and you have some friend pass for some situation, and you have money but you don't like to borrow your money, but this person is need money to fix something.
Mm-hmm.
If I say no, maybe I am not being generous person.
Mm-hmm.
If I say yes, I have a risk for this person never paid me, but at least I practice my generosity.
Okay. Everything in the Buddha's teachings is based in discernment. It's based in wise decision making. You need to make wise decisions, because if you don't make wise decisions, you're going to be making unwise decisions, and it's going to produce an unwholesome result for you. So everything is about the cultivation of wisdom and practicing discernment or wise decision making. Not in every situation is it wise to let someone borrow money. For example, this guy that came to me after college, he was drinking and going out and partying and all this other stuff. Why am I going to let him borrow money? He's not going to give it back to me. He's out there drinking and doing all these other things. There's no way I was going to let him borrow money. And that's not me being generous, that's not me not being generous. That's me practicing discernment. Now, I executed it in an unwise way, but I was practicing discernment that there was no way I was going to let this person borrow money. I actually didn't have that amount of money at that time anyway. And for me, I was out of college. I was living on my own. And if I didn't pay my bills, I didn't have anywhere to go. My family didn't have an open door for me to be able to go back and stay with my family. If he didn't pay his bills at college, he was going to go back to his parents and live with his parents. No big deal, right? So I wasn't not practicing generosity. I was practicing discernment in this situation. So that's one part there. You need to be able to see that. The next part is if someone ever asks you to borrow money, it's important to understand, because of the universal truth of impermanence, if you let 10 people borrow money, you're most likely not going to get back their money from all 10 people, right? Because of impermanence. Some people are going to pay you back and some people are not. So if you ever let someone borrow money, it's important that you keep in mind that if this person doesn't pay you back, that you're only willing to loan enough money that if they don't pay you back, it's not going to cause you harm. Because let's just say you have $10,000 in the bank and this is all the money that you have. Well, if somebody comes and asks you to borrow $8,000 and they don't pay you back, that's going to cause you significant harm, right? So it would be unwise, no matter who the person is, to let them borrow that $8,000 because it's going to cause you harm if they don't pay you back. Now, if somebody came to you and said, can I borrow $80 or $18, right? Now this, you might decide, okay, I can let them borrow that because if they don't pay me back, I'm not going to experience any significant harm here. There's still harm that they're causing. It's just not significant enough that it's going to impact your life in a negative way. So you should never let anybody borrow more money that is going to cause harm to you if they don't pay you back. Because if you let enough people borrow money and you're choosing to borrow money, it's only a matter of time before someone doesn't pay you back at some point. It's going to happen.
Yes, I had the exactly situation. I had a friend of mine and he always was doing party and never saving money. Mm-hmm. And then one time he had just a problem and he needed an amount of money to fix some problem. And I hate to borrow money, but in that point of my life, I have enough money to borrow for this person. Mm-hmm. And then I borrowed a piece of money that he was need. And after that, he never paid me mm-hmm. back. And mm-hmm. it's very, very bad because it's not about the money, mm-hmm. but it's about the trust that you give for the person, you know.
Sure.
So sometimes the harm is not just like about money or prejudices, but mm-hmm. even inside of you, because you trust someone, mm-hmm. you help someone, and this person just after say, oh, I have this problem, and put you in the last, you know, mm-hmm. like never pay you again.
That's where you've got to practice discernment. Like if you understand the 5 precepts, which I taught in the foundation course, I think you were here for the foundation course. So if you remember those 5 precepts, you know, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and taking substances that cause heedlessness, you know that if people are involved in that it's going to cause them harm. And, you know, if you're involved in that, it's going to cause you harm. So if I knew that somebody was drinking and using drugs, under no circumstances would I ever let them to borrow money. It's just really unwise, right? Not because I look down on them, not that I think they're less of a person or anything like that. It's just that they have this craving to use drugs and alcohol, and you know where that money is going to most likely end up and where it's going to go. So it's best to not let someone borrow money in that situation. These other people who maybe are making fairly wise decisions and they're fairly trustworthy, you might decide to let them borrow money, but just enough that if they don't pay you back, it's not going to cause you harm because you're not interested in causing yourself harm. That's what the Buddha teaches about generosity, that when you're practicing generosity, you need to make sure you're not going to harm yourself, you're going to harm others, or you're going to harm both. You're not interested in causing any harm whatsoever because any harm is going to produce unwholesome results in your life. So if you're going to practice generosity, you need to make sure you're not causing harm to yourself. So that sharing of money, the borrowing of money, make sure you're not going to cause harm to yourself if they don't pay you back. Because of the universal truth of impermanence, at some point, someone's not going to pay you back.
Okay, just last question. In my case, I already lived this situation and I cannot change the past, and now I have this harm with me because every time when I think about this money, I get very hungry, like I feel, you know, I don't know the feeling, but it's like something that's you trust someone and this person take your help and after give you just a shit for you. So, and how can I deal with it and don't let these kind of things take my mind, you know?
Sure. So mentally, you need to let it go. I don't know how much money it was and what the situation was, whether you're going to pursue it legally or anything like that. But mentally, you need to let go. And the way that you do that is through the Eightfold Path. If you remember the mental discipline section, where whenever you notice that thought coming up, you got to cut it off and let it go. Don't allow your mind to dwell in that thought. That doesn't mean that you don't pursue it. You know, if you need to pursue it legally or otherwise to be able to acquire this money again, I don't know how much it was, but that is something you can do. You know, you can pursue to get this money back, but you would like to get to the point where your mind's not longing, yearning, and forming feelings based on it. So you need to cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. And now you need to learn this lesson that I'm sharing with you that about money so that you don't ever end up in this situation ever again. But you will have people that will not pay you back. In fact, not too long ago, several months ago, there was a student here that we were going off on the Buddhist tour that I do every month, once a month, and I let them borrow some money and they never paid me back. Right. And they don't come here anymore, of course, but it can happen, you know, no matter what, you know, you can experience these kinds of things from time to time. But if you're not tied to your money and you're also not giving more than what you can, that's going to harm you, then you'll be fine. Right. So for me, this wasn't like a very significant amount of money that I let this person borrow. So it didn't cause me any harm. But it caused them harm because now they can't, in their mind, they probably feel like they can't come here in order to be able to learn. If they showed up today, I'd be pleased to teach them, but they probably feel like they can't come here because of what's happened now. And that's the harm that they've caused themselves by choosing to steal. Right? Because that's what they're doing. So you would like to get to a point where you understand that you can let people borrow money, but eventually they're not going to pay you back. Somebody, even when you know, are making all the wise decisions, it's going to happen. It's only a matter of time. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Looks like we have some question coming in here from Chris. Zoom. He says, "Hi, David. Could you share more detail around how to practice right mindfulness and right concentration within the workplace context?" It's the same as everything else, Chris. Is remember that mindfulness is your awareness of mind. So you'd like to be able to watch over your mind at all times during your day, so that if you're noticing any unwholesome qualities coming up, you apply right effort to cut that off and let it go. And then when you're observing the wholesome qualities, you support those, encourage them, and not allow them to fade away. You're going to need to practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Remember, you've got the bodily sensations, the feelings, the mental objects. The condition of the mind and the mental objects. You're going to need to pay attention to all of those things in your day-to-day life, in your workplace as well. And then your concentration, you're going to need to be focused and concentrated. That right concentration is practicing meditation and practicing singleness of mind as well. So one of the things that I used to do is I used to meditate during my workday. So I'd meditate in the morning, right? And then I'd meditate in the evening. You can usually do that at home. I would meditate in the middle of the day too. I had a company that I used to work for. They had these lactation rooms for women to go pump their breast milk. And, you know, there's probably like 4, 5, 6 of them because it was a pretty large company. I used to go in there and meditate. I was like, you know, I can do this. I can use this room. Nobody else is using it. I wasn't, you know, it's not like they were booked and, you know, there was a line at the door or anything. So there was like 4 or 5 rooms there. They were all empty. So I would go in there and meditate. Sometimes I worked for companies that didn't have that. So I would actually go into the bathroom and meditate. I would sit on the toilet with my clothes on and I would sit in the stall and I would meditate in the bathroom. And you've got a little bit of a challenge in there because you got people coming in and out. You've also got maybe some odors in there that you've got to deal with. So it's actually a great place to meditate. So be sure that you're practicing right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration all throughout your day, watching over your mind with mindfulness, applying right effort when you need to, and then practicing the right concentration, which is your meditation practice and singleness of mind as well. Okay. I don't see any questions anywhere else. Okay. So what I'm going to do then is just end our course and end our class here by thanking you guys. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings. I would also like to thank you for anything you might have done while you're here to contribute to the temple. You might have, decided to take out the trash or sweep the floor, or maybe sometimes people clean bathrooms, or maybe you've put a donation for us in the donation box to be able to help us pay for electric and water and things like this. I'd like to just say thank you for your generosity, because I don't have any expectation that you will support what I'm doing here. But if you do support what I'm doing here, I really appreciate that, because it allows me to help you and help countless people as well throughout the world. So thank you for your generosity and for your help. And as you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for you guys to be able to do that. If you look at the options to be able to learn, we have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, quizzes, all available from our website that you could actually learn from. We have in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats. We have these 2 ongoing programs that are here at the temple, but they're also live streamed as well. This group learning program, it's a 7-month program where we gradually go through this first book, chapter by chapter by chapter. And we're actually restarting this on August 9th from the very beginning. This is a great place for somebody to really start their journey, to really thoroughly understand the path to enlightenment, where it's just like an hour and a half each Sunday where you can learn about the path to enlightenment. And it's also on Wednesday too. And then we have the Pali Canon and English Study Group, which is a 1.5-year program where we go through volumes 2 through 13. So there's a lot of courses and retreats and programs for you to learn. You can even get help in personal discussions, because it's one thing learning in a class like this, but it's a whole nother thing relating it to your day-to-day activities. So as you're having challenges in your day-to-day life, you can actually schedule appointments either in person or online, where you can get online and you can schedule an appointment with me and we'll just meet in Zoom and I'll be able to help you. Or if you're in the same town as me, as I travel and as I'm here, you can just send me a message and we can meet in person. And then we have a Facebook group where you can post your questions in there and I'll be able to answer them. I'm the only one who answers the questions in there. And all of this is available at no cost. So you guys can get continued support on the path as you continue to journey on the path, because you're not going to be able to create harmonious relationships in just 5 days. This course is giving you a certain amount of information, but then you've got to dive deeper into it in order to be able to apply it in your day-to-day life. And that's where things just get better and better and better for you. So whatever you guys choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. And perhaps we'll see you guys in one of these future classes and future events that we have. You can see it on our bulletin board. You can see it on our website as well. So take care and be well. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.